gotta put your ego aside for that too, because it's just like me looking at them. Maybe they'll see me again, maybe they won't, but we're just crossing on the street or we're at the red light together or something. But when they look at me, what do they actually see?
Welcome back, man.
Yeah, thanks. How you doing?
Good.
Yeah.
How long's it been since you've been on the pod?
Pre-Christmas, was it? No.
Was it pre-Christmas?
No.
It might have been.
Maybe. It's been a bit.
Time flies, eh?
Yeah, it's been a bit.
It doesn't feel like it's before, but it very well could be 6.
Maybe it wasn't.
I feel like it was like 20 to 30 episodes.
Yeah.
Which would be 20 to 30 weeks. So it might actually be before Christmas.
Yeah, it's good to be back.
Yeah. It's good to have you. How you been, man? How's life?
Not bad. You know, I lost my my father recently, and that's been a difficult journey, but we're back into some routine and lots of reflection, which is good.
Yeah, man. It's parents passing away. It's one of those things. It's in the back of my head. I don't want to go through it myself, man. I know it's coming. Such a strange thing. I was listening to a podcast on Modern Wisdom.
Yep.
Chris Williamson, and he had a guest on there who was saying when his father passed away, it was he gained a lot of strength and confidence from it because he always had it in his head as something he wouldn't be able to get through, and then he got through it. Like so many other things in life, you know, we think it's so hard, and it is hard.
Yeah.
But you get through it, and you're like, oh, I'm stronger than I think.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. And if that individual prepares you for it, you know, I did talk about death with my father a little bit, and the people he lost and what he thought about it. And if you have the courage to have those conversations with people, I find it helps because you kind of knew where their perspective was.
Yeah.
It definitely doesn't make it easier, but it does help to know that they left you knowing kind of where they stood on death. So
really
it's a hard question to ask of somebody, right?
But just to be able to have those conversations around death is such a strange thing, you know?
Yeah.
My parents, when they talk about their will, and my dad's pretty good. My mom gets weird about it, you know, because just the thought of her passing away and dying, it's strange. And the whole concept that you're not going to be here someday is just so crazy. It's so hard for our minds to wrap ourselves around it because everything we view in the world is like our perspective, and to think that one day there's just going to be non-existence.
It's wild.
Yeah, it's really weird.
The Stoics talk a lot, and I think I've been reflecting on this, that the existence before you, right? So I've been thinking about that quite a bit. Like I was born in 1986, 40 years ago. But there was a 1985 when a lot of people who are still, lots of people who were still in existence in 1985, but I wasn't. And the ancient Stoics compare that to death. So just like there was existence and civility before you, there's going to be existence and civility after you. That's a real strange concept.
Yeah, no one ever thinks about that before you were born, you were non-existent.
Like say 1 year before your birthday was a day of like normal society for the people that were there.
Yeah.
Just like a year after your death date, it'll be normal. It's just because you do think that your existence is the generalized existence. When we're only just a blip.
Just a speck of dust.
And a short one.
Yeah, and shorter and shorter. That's one of the things as I get older, you realize how short and quick life just kind of goes by. We were just talking how it's like, it's June already.
Yeah.
And, I always, like, you go through Christmas and you go through New Year's and you always just think, it's a year. A year is so long. And then before you know it, it's like, it's the year's half over.
Yeah.
Right. And it's the same with like your whole life. You just kind of wake up one day and you're like, oh shit, my life's half over.
Yeah.
And Yeah, very strange how quick it goes by, and it accelerates too. It seems to accelerate.
It really accelerates.
Yeah.
And I'm 40, so like half would be 80, and 80 is a pretty good run.
Yeah.
Right. So that's, you start reflecting on that sort of stuff. I just read an obituary on the way here earlier of a friend's brother at 51, which is 11 years from me. So like,
yeah,
you look at those things and you think, there's part of you that thinks that wouldn't be me. And then there's a part of you that thinks that's going to be me. And it's a very strange concept.
Yeah, I was out to supper with a bunch of people the other day, but there was this older gentleman, and I remember just looking at him thinking, like, it's at one point in time, not that long ago, he was young and flourishing, and he's still flourishing in the Stoic sense, but from like a young and youth perspective, he's very young and doing all kinds of things, and the guy was, in great physical shape and all that.
Yeah.
But it just got me thinking how first time I met this guy, and I just see him as an older gentleman, but he was a younger gentleman, like not that long ago.
Yeah.
People just, you see them as stagnant, but people are always changing. And
I've definitely changed my view on elders. Like when I was younger, you just saw them as the older people.
Yeah.
But now when I encounter an relatively older person now, I think back to, I do see it as you were young once.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of try to encapsulate all that in them. Like, it's awesome that you're where you're at in your stage of life, but I do see them as more than just an elderly person. Like, you were a young person at one time. You were a kid. You were, my age or whatever, and more than just that elderly person that's before you, right?
Everyone's just they started as a baby and grew up to be a kid, and then on from there, and all these, the different parenting styles and different times, and everyone's got their own, journey. Joe Rogan talks quite a bit about that.
Okay. Yeah.
How, when he had kids, he started seeing people as like, that used to be a child, that used to be a baby.
Yeah.
And you see like an asshole, and you're like, hey, that guy, he used to be a child and entirely innocent,
It's a strange concept of people, too. Like, back to my father, we had a photo of him. He was we had his baby photo. Probably he was 1 or 2. And we had another photo of him, probably at about 8 or 9, out at his celebration of life. And that's a weird concept of the people were kids or somebody's kid, or they had to learn how to walk, they had to learn how to talk, or what were they like then, and how did their parents view them? And because all I ever knew him as was my father, right? So, but he was somebody's son and brother, and it's interesting to think about those different angles of people beyond what you know them as.
Mm-hmm.
That's a strange concept.
Yeah, it's weird that just in general, everyone, even people you randomly encounter, everyone has this opinion of who you are.
Yeah.
And most of them are wrong.
Yep.
Like the vast majority. There might be like, if you're lucky, man, there's like 5 people that really know who you are.
Yeah.
We've
talked about that about famous people too, or people that have lasted the test of history. Is like, say, Winston Churchill, for example, was a father and a brother and a son, and nobody knows or remembers him for any of those things, and a husband. But, these people were other things other than what they predominantly are known for. But it's hard for people to think about it like that.
Yeah. It was one of the points I was trying to make. Like, I did a reflection on your old man passing away, and just it's so crazy how your ego goes, because you're always thinking like legacy, and I want my name to pass down, but man, people are so unique and individual, and they have all these little idiosyncrasies, and how like what it's like to be in a room with them, and all these things that it doesn't matter. Nobody knows. Nobody knows. People can, someone like Marcus Aurelius, who has like a vast literature, and a lot of it's personal, you can probably piece together some degree, but what's it like to be Marcus Aurelius's friend?
Yeah.
You should have no idea.
Yeah.
Nobody does.
Yeah.
And I think that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, it is. It is. Everybody puts their pants on one leg at a time.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's everybody puts their feet on the floor at some point in the morning, right? So thinking about that for everybody on the planet, right? Because we look at individuals as icons or as tabloids or, but everybody does those things.
Mm-hmm.
And so, we're all very similar in a lot of ways, although we're different quite a bit in a lot of ways. We're very similar.
You remember when Justin Bieber started becoming famous?
Mm-hmm.
And I remember there were people that were, he was like 16 or 15 or something, like mid-teens.
He was young. Yeah.
But he was not a great celebrity,
Yeah.
like he was very rude in public often and, did some crazy things. But, and people would just kind of say he's an asshole and all this stuff. But he was like a teenager.
Yeah.
And like, I remember thinking, if that was me, would I be any better? And it's just a crazy thought how quick we are to judge people before we can't ever truly wear someone's shoes. No. We can wear someone's, if we're good, we can put someone's shoes on right now, but that doesn't mean we've walked all the miles that they have in those shoes. So you might be able to get some perspective. So there's probably some humility in there.
I've shifted my perspective quite a bit. When you look at, say, a news article or a video on social media, or you have your perspectives and your stances on certain people, but when it blows up or other people get a hold of it, or like a mistake, say in a press conference, somebody makes an error or says something off what they maybe meant, or it's all part of the human experience. And then, I think it's really important for people to have really high standards for themselves and others, especially if you put yourself out there in the cosmos or in the general cosmopolitan, but you're also human. So, you have 30 reporters in front of you and somebody asks you a question, you make one off statement and then it's all over everything. But I've really changed my perspective over time to think, they're human, instead of how could they say that, or how could that have happened, or didn't somebody coach them to, who knows, right? They're human. And once they said it, and then, to just kind of see that perspective of, well, that's a human, right?
You see that a lot in management, because as you kind of move up, I saw the path very clearly, how you can become just a boring manager, because you start off young, you're junior, and then everyone liked you when you were junior. If you move up, you're a junior guy, you're a go-getter and all this stuff, and then you move up one level. And you start to have a couple haters, right? Because someone else wanted that position and you took it. And you move up another level. And then if you're 50-50, like, you're lucky. Yeah. But what happens is you get punished severely for every mistake you make.
Yep.
And that could be as simple as you make a joke,
yep,
that you shouldn't have made because you're a manager, or that offends someone. And all jokes have the potential to offend. Every single joke has the potential to offend someone, right? That it's a joke. But then over time, you're the consequence and the risk are not, or the risk reward ratio is not there anymore. Equal. So you become this boring person who never makes jokes, who's very politically correct and very exactly. Yeah.
Where maybe some of the best leaders in time were not so calculated. And in retrospect, that made them great leaders. In the moment, it's very difficult to do because you're in the moment, right? And you're faced with whatever situation you have in that moment. But in retrospect, some of maybe the greatest leaders in time weren't so calculated.
Yeah.
But we saw it in the moment. It's only till later that people look back and say, oh yeah, they were great because of that quality, but in the moment they were getting, scrutinized for whatever.
There is something about ignoring.
And that's courage, I guess, in that leadership role, to be like, this is what I'm going to do, or this is what I'm going to say, and despite how it appears right now, with that foresight maybe of this is going to turn out okay, despite the pressure and the scrutiny and everything. But that takes courage. Otherwise, you're just in a shell and you're robotic.
It could be, it certainly could be courage. it depends on the context too. Sometimes it can go too far.
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, certainly there's a strong element of sometimes you have to just not give a shit what's going to happen afterwards. And you know what's interesting? I was looking up, Game of Thrones.
Yeah,
and I've watched that series several times. It's a great show. But Ned Stark, all right, everybody loved Ned, and I was thinking about him and how he ended up dying, and he got killed for sticking to the truth, kind of thing. And I had a good chat with AI on it, actually. Like, why, talk me through it and the Stoicism part of it. And he actually said that Ned's flaw was that he was politically unaware. So he was actually ignorant. So, and I thought it was so interesting because Ned was pretty much the Stoic, like the Stoic sage in the series, but that was his flaw. So, and it's not that you engage in politics, fully, but to be unaware of it, that's
a fault.
That's a fault. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely contextual. It can go too far for sure. You can't go rogue because, again, virtue is the greatest good, and you need to have high standards, especially if you're going to put yourself in where there's responsibility associated with it. I think you have to have high standards. If you go into a position of responsibility where you don't, that's chaotic and potentially very dangerous. So you have to have a high standard, but that calculation of, and I guess thinking about some of the leaders that, back to one of your previous episodes there, that the legacy of people that are remembered, Marcus Aurelius, how many Roman emperors were there and how many could people name? And they could maybe name Marcus Aurelius. So what separated him? It was probably that meditations were found. But if you think about other people, U.S. presidents, how many of them were there, and who are the ones who are remembered? Which one's legacy have surpassed time, and why? What characteristics? It could be contextual too of what was happening when they were in that role. Sometimes that happens where the circumstances fall on you, and then you're remembered because of that. Would Winston Churchill have been as remembered without World War II? Maybe, maybe not. Same with U.S. presidents, depending on what's going on at the time of their presidency. But beyond that, I think there are things that separate individuals and their legacy. And maybe some of that is not being so calculated or robotic.
Yeah, and I'd call that like conviction.
Yeah.
Yeah, some people just have conviction.
Yeah.
And you can move really quickly.
Yeah.
Not always the best, not always the wisest approach, but often good in terms of just raw progress. Like some of the like the protesters that were like had really, Mother Teresa maybe, or Gandhi, just like full on
Mandela, those individuals. Yeah.
There's no doubt in their mind that this is the path. And there's something to be said for that. But I think it's one of those things where it's you always have people that are kind of on the fringe, so to speak, and you got the Marcus Aureliuses and the Epictetuses and the Senecas, and as a percentage, man, it's such a small, of the overall people. Like if you think about all the Stoics that have existed throughout history, most of
how many don't we know, right?
Exactly.
We know of Socrates and Seneca and Epictetus and Aurelius and many others too, but how many don't we know? That were walking the streets of Athens or Rome, or maybe Crete too, or they just didn't. Their legacy didn't transpire the test of time. Nothing written down, or To
get back to what you said about just being people being human, I've always found it interesting when you read the three Stoic authors, and Seneca in particular has always fascinated me because he kind of got limbed probably 5 to 10 years ago by some of the Stoic scholars as being not really a Stoic, even though his writings were Stoic. And I always found that interesting because and just for those who don't know, it was the emperor that he was with, and the Emperor Nero was kind of tyrant, did a lot of terrible things, and
Yeah.
Seneca was kind of an advisor. He was part of that whole thing, and but I think it raised some interesting questions in terms of like what it means to be human. And I think certainly in Seneca's writings, I got the feeling, not that I didn't get it from Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, I got the feeling that Stoics are like boring people,
Yeah.
But Seneca really kind of showed me that you can be a Stoic and you can enjoy art.
Yes.
And you can have joy and you can laugh and have friends. And that was really cool. I quite enjoyed his take on it.
And perspective, back to my point about like contemporary people maybe, and giving some grace. I mean, you look at some individuals on the planet today, you wonder what decisions they're making and why. But giving a certain degree of grace to people for being human. And you look back at people like Seneca and wonder, it's easy. Hindsight's 20/20, and not being in those shoes is easy. So you have Seneca with Nero. Well, what would you actually have done? Is easier said than not. Yeah. It's easy to look back at, thousands of years ago and say, well, I would have just did this, but would you have? Right?
Very unlikely.
Yeah. Would you have? And so always keeping that in context, I think, is wisdom too of, would I have actually, pause for a second here and back up my pursuit of Seneca here. Like, would I have actually done something drastically different?
Peterson
probably not.
Peterson has a great perspective on that with the Nazis.
Yeah.
Right. Because he says, everyone says I would be the person fighting the Nazis. And he's like, you probably wouldn't be. Yeah. Like you would, statistically, you're going to be the guy that's.
Yeah. You look at the French population, right? And there was a certain demographic that were liberators and the, the underground liberation army in France and that sort of thing. And not everybody joined it. And it's easy to look back and say, well, why wouldn't you just have joined that and get masses? And well, the risk was substantial. So would everybody have done that? If we're in that situation, would we all do that? There would be a demographic that would, but similar to those protesters, you need to be well aware of and accepting of the risk. And not everybody would actually do that, even if they say they would.
Yeah. And it's not always appropriate to either.
No.
This is the other interesting thing is...
No, if you're going to risk your children...
Exactly.
Would you do it? If you're going to risk your community, are you going to do it? Your parents, would you do it? It's one thing if you yourself solely say, I'm going to do this, but then to risk everything, not everybody would actually do that.
Yeah, it's not always the right thing.
No.
Sometimes it is, but...
The easiest thing to do would be do whatever it takes to make your way through that, right? If somebody was to knock on my door today and say, hang this flag up in your window or else, everything it will cease to exist. It's one thing to stand on your doorstep and say, pound sand. It's another thing to just hang the flag up and, and then put your kids to bed. Right? It's easy to say, oh, well, I wouldn't, I would just stand there and say, pound sand. But when you look at the circumstances of all that, like Seneca as well, I mean, Nero would have just offed anybody, right? So would you have just accepted that?
And what for is the other thing. Sometimes that's a fair question. If you're gonna literally get killed over something.
Yeah. Is the price tag enough?
Stoics are not, death worshippers.
No.
And sometimes there's opportunity for that. But the interesting thing about that is a lot of times it's almost an impulse, like in the moments where people genuinely do give their lives for other people.
Yeah.
Like the whole throwing the grenade thing and the soldier jumps on the grenade. Like that is basically a split second. You're not consciously thinking of that. It's just in your head and you act, right?
No. Back to the concept of legacy. So one thing my father did was write down through his eyes the history of his life. Not in an official way or published, polished way, but he kept a journal from 1982 till the present day. And I had asked him a few years ago to write down everything prior to 1982. And so he did. And so the legacy of writing, and you look at Marcus Aurelius or Seneca or Churchill or any, the increase in legacy that comes with leaving behind tangible writing. Something that I have a bunch of journals too, and part of my path will have to be to tell people where they're at and to preserve them and things like that, because it is something tangible and meaningful that launches your legacy forward.
I would agree.
In your own, that you can control.
I'm curious.
I mean, they're open to interpretation too.
Yeah.
Whoever's reading them, but it's much more control than if you have absolutely nothing.
It is, for sure.
Right.
Today too, you got pictures and videos, which is also nice.
Yeah.
Writing is interesting. I'm curious because when I journal, one of the rules I have is that I write as if nobody is ever going to read it. You know, and now I have no intentions of lighting my journals on fire before I die. So probably at some point someone's going to read it. But I've always felt personally that that's an important rule because, you know, you journal and there's a lot of weird thoughts that come into your head. And the whole point of writing is to process them and organize them. And so you don't want to not write something down for fear of someone else is going to read them, right?
Yeah.
So anyways, that's interesting.
It's taken me a while. I've been journaling for a number of years, and it's taken me quite a while to come to that conclusion. I do now, but I've asked myself the question, what would be the purpose of writing here if I'm going to censor it?
Yeah.
Because then this journaling concept isn't maybe what it's intended to be. So now I do write freely and openly and without restriction, and it's freeing, but you do run the risk of somebody potentially reading it. And what impact, you got to weigh that question of what impact does that can have on others, right? So my father's journals, for example, talk a lot about other people and what he was experiencing with other people and things like that. And then if you don't, whoever reads that, if they don't know that person or if they think differently, then you're leaving an impact, right? So especially like, say, if my wife reads my journals or something after I pass away, you know, like if you're being open and honest, or a sister or my kids or whoever, right, read it, and you're talking about something that you're wrestling with, or it leaves an impact. And so you have to kind of either you just have to resign to the fact that that's not the purpose. I'm just going to write for myself and run the risk of them being discovered and read, or you change the way your journaling purpose is. Right? You gotta know what your intent is.
Yeah.
Am I writing just to calculate in a calculated way, wrestle through my thoughts, or am I journaling as a conversation to myself in writing?
Yeah. It's
two different questions.
I got to bring in Dostoevsky, right?
Yeah.
Because he wrote Notes from Underground.
Yeah.
Have you read Notes from Underground?
Yeah.
So because basically that's a journal,
and
it's a journal session of a very disturbed person who's very bitter and resentful and who has no friends and continuously falls into vice over and over again, and almost consciously, but also in a way that it feels like it's not even him. Like I recommend everyone read that book because it's such a powerful book. But anyways, I just thought it was interesting because like you're absolutely right on the whole piece of you got to be careful because thoughts get dark sometimes.
Yeah.
But then you look at it like something like Dostoevsky who wrote that, and just the psychological depth of it and just the impact that's had on so many people and reading that. And I know for me, that book was revolutionary. Hey there. Let me thank you for being a listener to this ad-free podcast. If you enjoy the podcast, there are a few things you can do to help me out. A 5-star review on Spotify or wherever you're listening to this Really does help, and it's free. You can also sign up for my Substack newsletter or Patreon. Substack free gets each episode emailed to you along with the transcripts in the form of an article. You'll also get access to my live talks, followed by a Q&A afterward. Substack Premium supporters and my patrons on Patreon get access to the recordings and a brief article of those Q&A sessions, access to full episodes of the Paradoxically Speaking podcast, my Steps to Success interview series, Stoic meditations, and much more. Links to Substack and Patreon can be found in the show notes.
Back to the concept of humanity, right? Or any of these icons being human, everybody, I think people would be amiss to think not every human being is having some degree of the thoughts that we write in our journals.
Yeah.
Right? So then, what the Stoics would say is you can't control how other people think or anything like that. So if somebody reads your journal and thinks, oh, wow, how could Brandon have actually wrote that down? Well, then there's a part of them, I think, that would be missing the fact that they also have similar thoughts of some sort. Yeah. And until you look at yourself and say like, well, okay, well, I actually think something along those lines too at times. So I get why Brandon would write that. Then we're not truly recognizing the human experience, I wouldn't say. If we're denying that fact that we would all have those certain thoughts.
That's shadow work, man.
That's shadow work.
And I think if you read Notes from Underground and you don't get it, meaning it doesn't really have an impact on you, it's because you're not relating to the author enough. And that's it's so crazy because when I read it, I remember having the same impulsive thoughts, that he was having on some of those things and thinking, like, my Lord, right? But so in some sense, reading that book for me was shadow work. It was kind of like a mirroring of, of some.
It's like when you read true crime.
Yeah, that's.
And you're like, it's an emotional experience if you're reading it authentically.
Yeah.
If you're reading any kind of true crime book, like I read about, say, the mafia, the American mafia a lot, the Italian mafia, or serial killers, or whatever it might be, like every once in a while I'll pick up a true crime book. If you read, be like, how could that person do that? Or how could they do that? Or this, you're not really reading it through a true human experience lens. And you have to be clear to say, I would, you have to have those boundaries. You have to have your own constitution and your own structure to be like, I know myself, I would never do that. But I also know that humans have the ability to do that. And that person was a human.
Yeah.
And that's two different things, right? You just have to know your own constitution to be like, yes, I would never do that.
Yeah.
Right. So I know that. So it's really disturbing that I'm reading this. But if you don't read it with the lens of humans have the ability to do this, obviously history would prove that, then you're not really reading it from an authentic lens. And that's same with any historical book for that matter. Interesting.
Well, that's where like the definition of the Stoic sage is interesting, because one definition is someone who cannot help but do the right thing.
Yeah.
Right. And that's a cool definition, because, you cannot help but do the right thing. It's not that like, it's not you always do the right thing. It's like you cannot help but do the right thing.
For you to not do the right thing.
Right. And there's been, I think everyone can probably relate to that in some sense. Yep. Like there's these little things in life that kind of happen, and you just, what's right, and you cannot bring yourself to not do the right thing. Yep. Like you just have to.
Yep.
And Stoic sageism is that with everything.
Yes. Absolutely everything. Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And which is a very hard ideal to attain, if not impossible. But it's cool to put it in that light,
Yeah. Yeah. Back to legacy, I was watching this clip. There's a famous clip, this just came to mind, because you and I have talked about World War II quite a bit, and the Normandy invasions particularly, but there's a clip of the 3rd Canadian Battalion, the North Shore Regiment, going to shore on Juno Beach the morning of D-Day, And it's one of the most common Canadian videos of that day, of a landing craft approaching the shore, and then the door drops and they all start unloading onto the beach. But it's the backs of all of the infantry, but one gentleman turns around at one point, looks behind him, and the camera captures his face, and then one of his comrades behind him taps him on the shoulder. You'll have to look the video up. I just read a thing the other day about how that years later, that individual was identified, and it was traced to who that was, where they were from. They're actually Nova Scotian. And then I happened to read a piece the other night about their life and their life after the war and things like that. And I remember, as I was reading that, I'm a history buff anyway, but as I was reading that, how would I know who that person was if it wasn't for them being there on that particular day? And there were multiple other people in that craft as well who nobody knows who they actually were because their backs are turned. He happened to turn around. So it's like, how am I reading about him if he hadn't been there and turned around? Like, it was just an interesting thought to think about. His legacy has reached me just by sheer chance of that particular instance.
That's strange, man.
And the fact that other people took the time to research it and dig enough to figure out who he actually was and then write about him. But he was just a normal, and then he moved back to Nova Scotia here, and he worked in pulp mills and stuff. And I read about like the rest of his life. It wasn't like he was like, his legacy was, profound. But I remember reading it and being like, how do I know about you? So interesting.
Yeah, it is. And history is filtered with little stuff like that. Just, luck.
Just luck,
think
right?
about the role that luck plays. I was thinking the other day on how, if you can just consider yourself as someone who experiences things, like that's what you are. You're a being who experiences things, mostly emotions and situations, and then you think that you have any control, like the smallest amount of control over what those experiences are. That's like it's a blessing. Like the fact that you have any control over what you experience is a blessing. And it's the same way in terms when you're thinking in terms of legacy and how you know people and how your name gets around and all that stuff. That really, for the most part, doesn't matter a whole lot. But it's interesting to know that like you have such a small sliver of control. Like that guy, he had no idea that that was going to happen.
I don't think he knew that it was being videotaped. Probably. I mean, I wouldn't be focusing on it being videotaped if that was the moment in time I was going through. And he didn't know what was going to happen after that. He didn't know if the video survived. All those things. Like, he also doesn't know who I am. He's since passed away and things like that. I've read up on him, but his name was George Baker. He was from Nova Scotia, but I don't know him. He doesn't know me, but his legacy has reached me through me being a history buff and reading it far enough, but him being in that moment in time. And all I remember thinking recently when I was looking at that is, how do I know him? Why is this happening? Why am I reading about him? How is this him? Like, how, of all the people, all the humans, right? I've never met him. He never met me. We don't even know each other. We would never know each other exists. Right. But I was thinking about legacy too, because his legacy has transpired because of that moment in time, but not at a large scale.
Yeah.
Most people, the vast majority of people, would never watch that video, and they would never watch it and then think far enough to figure out who is that guy. The vast majority of people would. Right.
Yeah.
It's like when you watch a history documentary and you see the Normandy landings or something. Most people don't think like, who are all these people?
Yeah.
You just see the footage and you don't even think that they have names or places or that they were kids or
wives back home.
Wives and stuff. So like most people wouldn't go far enough to figure out. But it's an interesting thing that his legacy, and he was just a normal Nova Scotian, transpired through to me. And it's like, that's interesting.
Mm-hmm. And you get some kind of weird sense of courage out of it.
Yeah.
You ever think about like your family tree? And I come from LaHave Islands, and it's a small archipelago of islands, basically. And but you go down to the grave sites, and you can trace back the Tumblins, back like 7 generations. And the oldest one that my dad found was Benjamin Tumblin. And I think I actually plan to name, if I have a son, I plan to name him Benjamin. But it's so interesting that I find I've never met this guy, and if you do the math, he's probably like a 16th or a 30, something like a small percentage of my genes is actually him, even though that's the name that survived. And there's on the mother side, I don't even know who they are, don't even know what their last names were, but it gives me a bit of courage knowing that he was like the first guy to come over from Europe and start making a life over here, and it's very strange. That's kind of like the strength of your ancestors. Like there's something to that.
And meaning, the cosmos or the equation of the universe. How does all this come together, and for what purpose? All based on decisions of other people in different periods of time.
Yep.
And is there a bigger equation, or maybe it's just all happenstance or whatever, but is there a bigger equation that all makes sense in some way?
And you think about the whole idea of control.
Yeah.
And then think about the situation you were born into.
Yeah.
And like the millions and billions of decisions that your ancestors made that led up to that, most of which probably could have gotten them killed in some fashion.
Yeah.
And like you talk about control, man, you have no control over that.
No. Right. Like my grandfather came from Hungary in 1928, and if he hadn't come from Hungary, then my father wouldn't have been born in Nova Scotia, then I wouldn't have been born in Nova Scotia. So if he had stayed in Hungary, would I have been born in Hungary?
You'd be speaking
I wouldn't even be me, because then you look at, my mother and my father created me.
Right.
So I would probably maybe have some of his genes, but it wouldn't be truly me, because it would probably likely have been another,
you wouldn't exist.
Not as I am now. No, not a chance. No.
If at all. That's where it gets weird with the whole existing thing and the question of the soul, like the Catholic soul and all this stuff, because it's almost inconceivable for us to think that we could not exist. Like just the fact that
and our ego. How could I not?
How could I not exist? I remember my mom telling me, she was telling me about how my mom and dad met and all this.
Yeah.
And I said, well, what if you had married someone else? And I said, I wouldn't be alive. And she said, no, you'd be alive, but you'd have a different father. And even at the time, I was like 7. I remember thinking no, I wouldn't. I just wouldn't exist. But my mom couldn't tell me that. I was 7 years old. But yeah, isn't it so interesting that that's where our mind goes? It's like, it's not that I wouldn't exist. I'd have darker skin, or I would have, it's like, no, you just wouldn't exist.
Another interesting concept I was reading about recently is neurology, or I guess it's neurology, but I was reading about our retinas, and this is an interesting concept, that and I don't know, I'm no scientist, I'm no biologist or physician or anything, but what I was reading said that our retinas there's some sort of nerve that doesn't actually attach between your eye and your brain, or some sort of connection. So it was talking about how you never truly know what you truly look like. And so what it went on to explain, and I would have to research it or confirm it, is everything we see is our brain's interpretation of what we see. And so we don't actually know if that's truly what we see.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's all just calculations of the input that our eyes are bringing and what our brain perceives to be what this was explaining is that your brain is essentially doing guesswork based on all the information that's gathering. It's guessing. It's essentially guessing. It can't be 100% guaranteed that what you're seeing is what you're seeing.
That's messed up.
Isn't that messed up? And I don't know. I'd have to look at the biology and I'd have to confirm it. And maybe it's something we could research sometime. But it's like, it does make sense, I guess. Because I've read about that with colors and stuff before too, of like, colors aren't truly colors. They're just, they're just a reflection and your brain's interpretation of which is why certain people can see certain shades. But this was explaining how like your brain is essentially always just doing guesswork based on like prior input that it had. It's what you're seeing. So what you're seeing is not actually what you're seeing. It's your brain guessing what you're seeing.
It's certainly true that your brain fills in imperfections.
Yeah.
Right? Like in yourself, when you look in the mirror, it'll balance out your imperfections.
And that's what I was talking about too, is like, you don't, this is how this, I'll have to send it to you. You don't actually know how you look to other people.
You're uglier than you think is essentially
yeah, exactly.
Right.
You cannot determine what you look like to other people.
That's
because
crazy.
It's your brain interpreting what you look like. And then there's all the ego and identity and everything like that. So you perceive, but you have no idea what you look like to somebody else.
And you know what's crazy is that's true psychologically.
Yeah.
Where you have you can't see your true self. Isn't that fascinating?
Sometimes I zoom out and think of that, which is an interesting concept of like, so if I'm driving home here this afternoon, what does that person in the other car see?
Yeah.
And that's you got to put your ego aside for that too, because it's just like me looking at them. They're not maybe they'll see me again, maybe they won't, but we're just crossing on the street or we're at the red light together or something. But when they look at me, what are they actually seeing?
Yeah.
Right.
Some guy rocking out to Bon Jovi.
Some guy rocking out. And then if you zoom out, I do the zoom out a lot too, which is this ancient Stoic concept of like, if I'm sitting at a red light, you zoom out to like, say, Sackville.
Yeah.
And you're just a Honda Civic at a red light and there's other streets and cars going everywhere and the highways and stuff. And then you zoom out to Halifax and you're just a blip. And then Nova Scotia and you're just a definite blip.
Yeah.
And then the world, you're just this little, just you zoom out and you're like, wow, this is pretty insignificant, right? Like I'm just, yeah. I look at that with traffic sometimes, all the cars that are lined up. And I mean, Halifax doesn't have substantial traffic if you travel other parts of the world, but you look and you're like, all these people are just zooming around and nobody knows who anybody else is. And it's all just
following arbitrary rules.
Arbitrary rules.
I noticed that in Vietnam. It was a bit of a shock to me when I was over there visiting because the road rules are completely different.
Yeah.
I almost got killed like the first time I was on a scooter, and all it was is I was playing by the rules I knew, which were not the rules that they played by.
Yeah. That's like when I went to Kenya, there were things called matatus. They were basically taxis, but zooming in out of ditches, crossing lanes, crossing highways and coming back around, zooming around buses. And I remember thinking that's wild but it was all very controlled. You didn't see people crashing into it because it was a different set of arbitrary rules.
Yeah.
They were all following the rules of what they knew to be the rules. But for me, it was like, wow, this is chaotic.
Yeah.
Sometimes they would loop back around to get around a bus. Like they'd be going this direction and then loop back around and go around the other side of the bus to keep going. And I remember thinking like, if you did that in Nova Scotia, you'd be, but there was no accidents that I ever observed. I'm sure there is, but it was all very controlled based on their arbitrary idea of what transportation meant. Where our arbitrary, is they would come here and be like, why can't I just, and for us, it's like very controlled, very calculated. It's very interesting.
You mentioned the accidents. That was the shocking thing to me is I didn't see many accidents.
No.
Which was crazy because in my mind, I'm like, this is nuts. Someone's going to get killed here.
You really don't see
But you don't see a lot of it, no.
No. You don't see a lot of it. And I wonder why that is. I wonder if there's any data or research on that because I was in Kenya for 2 months and I really didn't see any.
My stepmom said it's because in the city they go slower.
I think that
which is true, and
because it's so chaotic, they do go slower.
They do go slower,
and so you have more reaction time and things like that.
So they probably bump, but it's no damage, right? Like they probably
and then just keep going,
because
it's arbitrary rules. Here, it's all insurance, right? If you bump into, if I drive home now and just bump into somebody's bumper.
Yeah.
We're going to have our insurance cards out. And
oh, yeah.
There, it's probably just so slow, and they bump in and say, oh, like, have a good day, right? Like,
man, I was at Superstore the other day. We stopped in, and I'm getting out of the car, and there's this woman there with a what do you call it, the hanger?
Oh, yes.
Right? Like trying to
get into the window?
Trying to get into this window, right? And she asked me if I could help or whatever. So I just, oh, yeah, sure. So I go in and I help her break into this vehicle, right? And she was like, hey, can you just take this hanger and just give it to the guy? So anyways, I bring it down, and I'm walking there with this hanger, right, that I just broke into this car. Yeah. I'm thinking, man, am I gonna, did I just help someone like break into someone else's vehicle, right? So anyways, I didn't get called, or the cops didn't show up at my door, but it was just the funniest moment of like, you know, trying to be kind and
just trustworthy and human,
you know?
Yeah. That goes back to our previous conversation earlier today there of like, we're not a very trustworthy species. Like when you look at land ownership and any of that kind of stuff, it's because all those things essentially exist because humans aren't trustworthy, right? We just can't function in a fair way
at scale.
If we don't have rules and rule books, which is an interesting concept too. Because you'd like to think like, oh, I'm just helping this person out, and then that's the nice thing to do, and we're all good, and everything's good. But humanity isn't really that way, right? It's like
calling you to bail me out.
Yeah. It's like it'd be nice to think that that's the way it actually all works, but there is a chance, a probability that that's not what it is, right? So it's like, it's funny that humans, although we're all very similar, we can't function in an honest, virtuous way.
Yeah. We just have disagreements all the time about stuff, you know?
Oh, yeah.
So at least if you have the law that gives you something this is written in stone, and at least you have something to work with.
But sometimes I think that skews virtue, right? Like if somebody knocked on our door tonight and said, hey, can I stay here for 4 days? I just, you know, I'm in the process of moving, and I had to get out of my previous spot, and my next spot doesn't open for 4 days. I don't know if we would say yes.
Some random person?
Some random person, right? So it's like the virtuous thing to do would be, yeah, sure, I have a house and a bed, and
give me a criminal background check.
But we just, humans we can't function that way. And I don't know if that's societal, or if it's because we have such strict rules or something, or if it's just that we can't function that way as humans, because what would prevent it? We know the right thing would be likely yes.
It depends, right? But I'll give you an interesting one. My buddy Josh Bertolotti, everyone knows him on this podcast, but he was telling me about a time where he was driving his daughter to something, and they passed this guy that was hitchhiking on the road, right? And it was the same thing. It was like he got this impulse, like I should help him,
the right thing,
but I'm not taking the risk with my daughter in the car, right? And it's hard to say that that's not right.
Yeah.
Right? Like getting back to what's the appropriate move here. Like you just don't know this person.
Yes.
Now, if it's, the other thing too on that is if it's culturally acceptable, it's a little different. Like if there's a culture of, you know, oh yeah, I'm moving, I'll just go knock on someone's door and stay with them for 4 days, right?
Yeah.
Which, it sounds crazy to us, but hunter-gatherer tribes, that's stay in my tent, man.
Yeah.
You know, bathrooms out back, right?
Yeah.
You know?
100%.
So it's not that far-fetched. Just in our society, it is.
But if true virtue existed, that wouldn't be a question, right? It would just be, yeah, sure.
On what?
Like if somebody knocked on your door, and like, if all humans were virtuous,
oh yeah, if everyone,
it wouldn't be an issue. But
good faith, if everyone operated in good faith, then it wouldn't be a question.
Yeah,
that's the whole evil, the vice thing.
The vice thing, yeah. But appropriateness, the Stoics would also say, what's appropriate for the situation, and you know, even if there is an inkling of it being good, you still have to be appropriate. And if appropriate is no, then that's the right decision to make in that moment. But it's an interesting, we're all about rules. Humans, we're all about rules and structure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because that's the whole thing of the Joker, right? In Batman. Yeah. It's, you know, once you get rid of the rules, these guys will turn into animals.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And it's like, for the most part, it's true, right?
It is true.
You need...
chaos. Absolute chaos.
Yeah.
But it is funny how arbitrary things are, like speed limits, right? If the speed limit on the street out here right now is 60, within about 3 weeks, that could be automatically changed to 80.
Yeah.
If the legislation was to change.
79.
Or 79.
Or
and then all the signs would change to 79.
Yeah.
And then it would be 79.
Or some new measurement system, and some like kilometers per hour.
Yeah.
What about, meters?
Yeah, and then all the signs would change and everything would be that, right? And so it's like, it's super important right now in this moment, because if I don't do 60, I'm getting a fine and et cetera, et cetera. But realistically, in 3 weeks, it could be 80, and then that's important.
That's a real problem in engineering, eh?
I believe it.
It is. No, it is. It's a real problem, because what happens is something becomes widespread, and then it could be deeply flawed.
Yeah.
But because it's so widespread, it stays. It stays, and you can't.
Yeah.
You can always change things, but it takes so long, and then to invent something new.
And then you need everybody to get on board with it.
Yeah.
Right. So
for cost. It's like you can do your own thing, but the price of something like that, and basically like even like shipping locking for containers, they got those locks in there, and the locks on the corners are standard. The locks that they fit into are all standard, right? And if you could come up with a better way of doing that, good luck, man, because it's so widespread.
Yeah.
There's no way no one's gonna buy it, right?
Yeah. I think it's very similar in the medical world too.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, because I do think, I was talking to a colleague about this not long ago, but you'd have to, I don't know anything about the medical world, but I wonder if some things stay the same because it's so difficult to change, right? Whether it's a practice or a medicine, or, if there is something better, but it's just not getting traction, or there's something more effective or efficient, it's just not getting traction because everything is structured to be what's already in place.
Yep.
Right. So you'd have to get everything to get aligned with the newer, more effective, which takes time and money and cost and effort and training and everything like that. So there could be something much more effective, but it's just that everything's set up to be a certain way that it just doesn't happen. And that's an interesting concept too.
When you think about it in terms of something like vehicles, right? Like just how hard Tesla had to fight just to get a tiny little bit of infrastructure.
Yes.
And like, what's the number one reason most people don't want an electric vehicle? It's like takes too long to charge, and they're infrequent, and you can't find them often.
Yeah, 100%. Otherwise, the people would have them. 100%.
And that's just a historical thing. The combustion engine was developed before we optimized electrical vehicles, and it's literally just an ordering thing.
Yeah. And then you get greed, right? Greed would be a part of it too. In order for effective change to happen, somebody along the chain has to give. Right. And so that comes into play. And then who influences who?
Yeah.
Who influences what decisions are made and all that kind of stuff, right? Because then you get into all that. If, again, we were just as humans like, okay, this is more effective, let's do it.
Everybody get on.
We would, right? But there's all kinds of alley things that have to take place for that to happen. Right?
It's crazy with the amount of terminology too. Like you think about language and how we talk, and I'm a boat nerd, so it's like port and starboard, right? Port being left side, starboard being right side. But that came from the fact that you used to have your rudder on that side, and it was a steering board.
Yeah.
And then the other side, because of the steering board on this side, has to go into port.
Yeah.
So that was your port side. The left side was always the port side, and now it's just port side. That's what it is. But it has a very deep history in the engineering side of things and how things were developed, and people just don't think about that anymore. With language.
It's interesting. Yeah.
Well, man, we're an hour in. Should we wrap it up?
Yeah.
Any final...
thanks for having me back.
Final words of wisdom?
Thanks for all the kind words, too, over this past little bit of time in regards to my father and that situation. Stoicism helps. The philosophy of Stoicism helps. I mean, they're no stranger to death. They would say, think about it every day. And so that that helps quite a bit. But having friends like you to talk about it and things like that help too. And just that concept of legacy, right?
Mm-hmm. I appreciate that, man. To your father.
Yeah.
It's only it's very recent, eh? It's within the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, it would only be May 20th he passed. So
May 20th.
I guess it is 2 weeks or so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Life goes by quick, eh?
And it keeps going.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thanks, man. I'll be hopefully back again soon.
Cheers, man.
Yeah.
Till next time.
All right.
Bad boy up.